They're not going to pay it back. The United States government owes $38 trillion, and here's what they're not telling you. There's no realistic plan to ever pay it back. Not through taxes, not through spending cuts, not through economic growth. But here's the thing. They don't actually need to pay it back, at least not in the way you think. Because throughout history, governments facing unpayable debt have used a playbook that's both brilliant and devastating. And right now, in 2025, we're watching that same playbook unfold with two assets at the center, gold and Bitcoin. Let's start with the numbers that should terrify you but somehow don't because they're too big to comprehend. The official U.S. national debt is $38 trillion as of January 2025. This doesn't even include unfunded liabilities like Social Security and Medicare. When you add those in, the real obligations exceed $200 trillion. But let's just stick with the official $38 trillion, because even that is mathematically impossible to pay back. The U.S. government now spends over $1.1 trillion per year just on interest payments on the debt, not paying down the principal, just servicing the interest. That's more than the entire defense budget, more than Medicare, more than Medicaid. It's the second largest line item in the federal budget, after Social Security. And here's the death spiral. To pay the $1.1 trillion in interest, the government has to borrow new money because tax revenue doesn't cover it. So they issue new bonds, that increases the total debt, which increases next year's interest payment, which requires even more borrowing. It's a mathematical black hole. There are only three ways out. Option 1, officially default. Just announce we're not paying back the bondholders. This is financial suicide. The dollar would collapse overnight, the global economy would implode, every pension fund and retirement account would be wiped out. So that's completely off the table. Option 2, austerity. Slash spending and raise taxes to actually balance the budget. To close the current deficit, you'd have to cut Social Security by 40%, eliminate the military entirely, or double income taxes on everyone. This is political suicide. Any politician who proposed this would be voted out instantly. The American public will not accept austerity, period. Which leaves option 3, the option that every bankrupt empire in history has used when trapped by unpayable debt. You don't default on the number, you default on the value. You pay back every dollar you owe, but you pay it back in currency that's worth a fraction of what it was when you borrowed it. You inflate the debt away. This is called financial repression, and it's not a theory, it's official policy happening right now. Here's how it works. The Federal Reserve keeps interest rates below the real rate of inflation. Let's say you put your money in a savings account earning 2% interest, but real inflation, the actual increase in the cost of food, housing, and healthcare, is running at 6%. You just lost 4% of your purchasing power this year. Where did that value go? It was transferred directly to the government because their debt just got 4% cheaper in real terms. This is the hidden tax, the silent theft, and it's the only way out of the debt trap. But this plan has a fatal flaw. If people wake up and realize their savings are being stolen, they panic. They dump dollars and run to hard assets, gold, Bitcoin, anything that can't be printed. And when that happens, you get hyperinflation. The controlled demolition becomes an uncontrolled collapse. So to pull this off, to inflate away $38 trillion in debt without triggering hyperinflation, you need two things. First, you need an anchor, something to restore faith in the system after you finish debasing the currency, something universally trusted that can't be printed. Second, you need to control the exit. You need to make sure that when people flee the dollar, they flee into assets that benefit the government's balance sheet.
And this is where gold and Bitcoin come in. The United States officially holds 8,133 metric tons of gold, the largest reserve in the world, more than Germany, Italy, and France combined. Most of it is supposedly stored at Fort Knox, though there hasn't been a full independent audit since 1953. Think about that, 72 years without a real audit. But let's assume the gold is actually there. Here's the magic trick. On the U.S. Treasury's balance sheet, that gold is valued at $42.22 per ounce. That's not a typo. It's the official statutory price set in the 1970s, a completely artificial accounting number that has nothing to do with reality. The current market price of gold is around $2,600 per ounce. So at the official price of $42, the entire U.S. gold reserve is worth about $11 billion, basically nothing. At the current market price of $2,600, it's worth about $680 billion. Better, but still not enough to make a dent in $38 trillion. But here's what you're missing. The government doesn't care about the current market price. They care about the reset price, the price they will set when the system breaks and they need to recapitalize. And there's historical precedent for exactly this move. In 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for American citizens to own gold. You were forced, under penalty of 10 years in prison, to turn in all your gold coins and bullion to the government. They paid you $20.67 per ounce in paper dollars. Then, after the government had collected everyone's gold, FDR signed the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 and repriced gold to $35 per ounce, a 69% devaluation of the dollar overnight. Everyone holding paper currency lost 40% of their purchasing power. Everyone who had held gold, well, they couldn't because it was illegal. The government confiscated the wealth of an entire generation with the stroke of a pen. Now, imagine they do it again, but bigger, much bigger. Imagine the crisis escalates. Treasury bond yields spike to 8%, 9%, the deficit explodes, inflation hits 15%, 20%, the system is breaking. And the president goes on television and announces that to restore stability and faith in the dollar, the official price of gold will be set at $25,000 per ounce. Suddenly, the U.S. gold reserve is worth over $6 trillion. That can be used to backstop a new currency, to recapitalize the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, to make the government's finances look solvent again. And here's the key. Everyone holding paper dollars when this happens gets destroyed. Their purchasing power evaporates as the dollar is revalued downward against gold. But the government holding the actual gold becomes the richest entity on Earth. But gold alone isn't enough for the 21st century. Gold is physical, it's slow, you can't send it across the internet, you can't program it, which is why the government needs a digital component to the reset. And that's where Bitcoin comes in. For 15 years, the U.S. government told you Bitcoin was a scam, a tool for criminals, a speculative bubble. The SEC under Gary Gensler waged an all-out war on the crypto industry. They sued Coinbase, Binance, Ripple, everyone. They ran Operation Choke Point 2.0, a coordinated campaign to cut crypto companies off from the banking system. It was a systematic attempt to kill the industry. Why? Because Bitcoin is the ultimate threat to their inflation plan. It's an asset with a fixed supply that can't be printed, it's permissionless, it's borderless, it's the perfect escape hatch from a devaluing dollar. And then, suddenly, everything changed. January 2025. New administration takes office. Within 90 days, the entire U.S. policy on crypto does a complete 180-degree reversal. Gary Gensler resigns as CE chair, the DOJ disbands its cryptocurrency enforcement team, and then the bombshell. March 2025, the White House announces the creation of a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. The same government that spent a decade calling Bitcoin criminal garbage officially recognized it as a strategic reserve asset right alongside gold.
How is this possible? How do you go from trying to destroy something to making it a cornerstone of national financial strategy? Here's the answer. They realized they couldn't kill it. Bitcoin survived. And when they realized they couldn't kill it, they decided to co-opt it, to turn it from a threat into a tool. And here's the beautiful part. They didn't even have to buy it. The U.S. government is already one of the largest known holders of Bitcoin in the world, with over 207,000 BTC seized from criminal operations, Silk Road, Bitfinex hack, and various other seizures. At current prices, around $100,000 per Bitcoin, that's over $20 billion. But just like the gold, they don't care about today's price. They care about the reset price. Here's the plan. Phase 1. Let Bitcoin get legitimized. The SEC approved Bitcoin ETFs in 2024. This brought Bitcoin inside the Wall Street system. Now people can buy it in their 401ks through BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust. It's safe, it's regulated, it's approved. Phase 2. Encourage retail adoption. You, the average citizen, are told Bitcoin is now a legitimate investment. But how do you get exposure? Through the ETF in your retirement account. You don't hold the actual Bitcoin. You hold shares of a fund that holds Bitcoin. It's paper Bitcoin, just like paper gold. Phase 3. The government holds the real asset. While you hold IOUs, the government holds 207,000 plus actual Bitcoin in cold storage wallets. And here's where the magic happens. As the great devaluation accelerates, as inflation erodes your dollar savings, you panic. You look for a safe haven. And what's right there, approved, legitimized, available in your 401k? Bitcoin and gold ETFs. So you take your melting dollars and you pour them into these assets. You and millions of other panicked savers drive up the price. Bitcoin goes from $100,000 to $200,000 to $500,000 to $1 million. This is the closed-loop system. Devalue the dollar through inflation, panic the population into fleeing dollars, channel that panic into gold and Bitcoin, watch as retail buying drives the price of your massive reserves to the moon, and when the crisis peaks, announce the reset. Revalue gold to $25,000 per ounce and Bitcoin to whatever price makes the math work. Introduce a new digital currency backed by these assets. Wipe out the debt by converting old dollars to new dollars at a massive haircut. And it's not just the US doing this. Look around the world. Central banks globally have been buying gold at record pace for 3 straight years, over 1,000 metric tons per year in 2022, 2023, and 2024. China is dumping U.S. treasuries and stacking gold. Russia is stacking gold. India, Turkey, Poland, Singapore, everyone is rotating out of dollars and into hard assets. They all see the same thing. The dollar's reserve currency status is ending. The U.S. has to inflate away its debt, and when the reset comes, the countries holding the most gold and Bitcoin will control the next financial system. So what does this actually look like? What happens to you when they pull the trigger? Let me paint you the picture. It's 2027 or 2028. Treasury yields have spiked to 9%. The government can't afford the interest payments. Inflation is running at 20%. The dollar is in free fall. Foreign governments are dumping treasuries. The stock market has crashed 40%. Banks are failing. There are runs on ATMs. The system is breaking.
And then, on a Friday night, the president addresses the nation and declares a 3-day banking holiday. All banks and financial markets will close while emergency measures are implemented. For 72 hours, you can't access your money, you can't trade, you can't do anything. And then Monday morning comes. You check your phone, there's a notification, a mandatory software update installed overnight, and a new app, Fed Wallet. You open it, your old bank account showed $100,000. Your new Fed wallet shows 10,000 new digital dollars. You've been hit with a 10-to-1 conversion. You just lost 90% of your nominal wealth. But there's more. A second notification tells you your new digital dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States and secured by strategic reserves of gold valued at $25,000 per ounce and Bitcoin valued at $1 million per coin. They just told you your savings were vaporized, but trust us, the new money is sound. And because you're desperate, because the alternative is chaos, because you need to pay your bills and feed your family, you accept it. You have no choice. Your grandmother living on a fixed pension? Destroyed. Her $3,000 monthly check is now worth $300 in purchasing power. The responsible saver who did everything right? Destroyed. 90% of their wealth gone overnight. Foreign governments holding trillions in U.S. treasuries? Destroyed. But the government, they're fine. Better than fine. Their debt is now manageable.
Their gold reserve, officially repriced to $25,000 per ounce, is worth over $6 trillion. Their Bitcoin reserve, repriced to $1 million per coin, is worth over $200 billion. Their balance sheet looks pristine. And that irresponsible neighbor who bought a house he couldn't afford with a $1 million mortgage, he just won. His debt is now effectively $100,000 in new dollars. Debt is rewarded. Savings are punished. And the new digital dollar? It's the CBDC, the central bank digital currency that you would have never accepted voluntarily. But now, after 3 days of chaos, you're begging for stability. This new digital dollar is programmable money. They can set spending limits. They can set expiration dates. They can freeze your account. It's the ultimate financial control grid, and you walked right into it. So what do? How do you protect yourself? First, understand the difference between currency and assets. The dollars in your bank account are currency. They're a promise, and that promise is being broken. Real assets are things that can't be printed. Gold, Bitcoin, real estate, productive businesses, commodities. Second, diversify out of pure dollar exposure. If everything you own is denominated in dollars, you're vulnerable. Hold physical gold. Hold actual Bitcoin in self-custody, not ETF shares. Third, pay attention to what governments do, not what they say. They said gold was worthless. They hoarded 8,133 tons. They said Bitcoin was for criminals. They accumulated over 207,000 coins. Watch their actions. The warning signs are everywhere. Record gold buying by central banks. Bitcoin approved as a strategic reserve. Inflation running hot. Treasury yields spiking. Foreign buyers abandoning U.S. debt. Gold hitting all-time highs. The mechanisms are in place. The plan is in motion. The only question is how fast it unfolds. The U.S. government is going to erase $38 trillion in debt using gold and crypto as the anchors for a new system. And they're using your fear and your panic to pump the value of their reserves while your savings evaporate. Most people won't even realize what happened until it's over. Pay attention. Protect yourself, and understand that everything you thought you knew about dollar stability, about government debt, about the safety of savings, all of it is about to be tested. The reset is coming. The only question is whether you'll see it in time.